8 arrests, 9 days, 23 minutes, 7 people inside the Pentagon, 7 different offices, 7 different levels of access to the most sensitive military infrastructure in the world. None of them had ever met. None of them knew the other 6 existed. Each one believed they were the only spy their handler was running. That belief was not an accident. It was the design. And it almost worked. A Monday morning, a financial analyst, a routine flag from a domestic intelligence sweep. A Pentagon logistics officer had a second bank account. That account had received 4 wire transfers over 9 months. Total value, $178,000. Origin, a holding company registered in the United Arab Emirates. The UAE holding company traced through 2 shell registrations to a financial node the Treasury Department had flagged 2 years earlier. The node was connected to a Gulf region network used by Chinese intelligence to pay US-based assets working in administrative and logistics roles. The analyst confirmed the match, built the preliminary case. By Thursday, she had enough to escalate. She submitted the file, moved to the next item in her queue. She did not know there were 6 more. 3 weeks later, a completely different system, a completely different analyst, a completely different building. An NSA signals report flagged a communications specialist at the Pentagon. He had accessed a classified network routing file outside his authorized portfolio. 11 minutes. During an overnight monitoring gap. No outbound transmission logged. The file covered the architecture of a classified interagency communications channel. He had no documented reason to open it. The analyst ran a standard cross-reference, pulled the specialist's travel history. What came back stopped her. The communications specialist had traveled to Dubai 14 months earlier. Conference attendance. Documented, approved. But the Dubai entry produced something. An allied intelligence service had flagged a specific hotel in that city. Same week the specialist was there. A UAE-based individual of counterintelligence interest had used that hotel as a meeting location during the same 7 days. Same city, same week, same hotel district. That alone meant nothing. Or it meant everything. The analyst flagged the anomaly, cross-referenced it, submitted it to her section chief. The section chief now had 2 files on her desk. A logistics officer connected to a UAE holding company linked to Chinese intelligence. A communications specialist with unauthorized classified file access and a Dubai travel flag from the same operational period. Different systems, different analysts, different referral tracks. She looked at both files for 20 minutes, then called in her senior analyst. "These are not the same case," she said, "but they might be the same network. Standard procedure would have processed them separately. 2 investigations, 2 tracks, no connection drawn." She did not follow standard procedure. She submitted one request to the FBI's Financial Intelligence Fusion Cell. Pull every active Pentagon counterintelligence financial flag showing UAE wire transfers, UAE holding company connections, or Dubai travel inside an 18-month window. She expected a third match. The fusion cell came back 48 hours later. There were 7 Pentagon employees, 7 separate financial flags, generated by different systems, reviewed by different analysts, processed through different referral channels. None had ever appeared in the same case file. Until now. A logistics officer, a communications specialist, a senior budget analyst in the office of the comptroller, a human resources manager in the personnel division, a legal counsel attached to the classified programs section of the general counsel's office, a protocol officer managing official travel and senior official movement, an intelligence analyst assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency's Regional Assessments Division. 7 positions. Read them individually. Each one is a mid-level Pentagon employee with a security clearance and a functional role. Read them together. Something else becomes visible. Logistics covers how the military moves resources. What goes where, when, by which route. Communications covers how information travels inside the most sensitive networks in the department. Budget covers where money flows. What programs are funded? What isn't? Personnel covers who gets hired, promoted, transferred, and cleared. Legal covers the constraints. What operations are authorized? What lines cannot be crossed? Protocol covers the physical movements of the department's senior leadership. Schedules, travel, security arrangements. Intelligence assessments cover what the department believes about the operational environment it is preparing to act inside. No single spy could provide all of that. One asset with broad access is a known risk. Agencies watch for it. Counterintelligence programs are designed to detect it. 7 assets, each with narrow access, each operating independently, each believing they are the only one. That is something different. That is not a penetration. That is a map. Assembled piece by piece, position by position, the 7 created a picture of the entire Department of Defense, its resource flows, its communication infrastructure, its personnel decisions, its legal boundaries, its leadership movements, its budget priorities, its reading of the world it was preparing to operate in. Total assessed compensation across all 7 over their identified operational periods. Approximately $890,000, less than $1 million, for a comprehensive internal map of the most powerful military department on Earth. Each of the 7 had passed background checks, held active clearances, reported to work, sat in meetings, received performance evaluations. None had ever been in the same room together. None knew the other 6 existed. Each believed they were the only asset their handler was running. That belief was not accidental. It was the structural principle the entire network was built around. Because if one was caught, they could only give up themselves. And the handler was still in the country. The financial analysis that surfaced all 7 also contained something the fusion cell had not fully recognized when it appended it to the report. One of the financial flags, the budget analysts, had come from a wire transfer 11 days earlier. Same UAE holding company that had paid the logistics officer. But the transaction reference code on this transfer was different. A treasury specialist recognized the format. It was a distribution event. Distribution events are not recurring payments. They are not salary cycles or retainer structures. A distribution event is money moving outward from a single source to multiple destination accounts simultaneously. In the intelligence community's financial analysis history, that pattern was associated with one specific operational circumstance: a handler preparing to leave, distributing final payments to assets before cutting direct financial ties. This was not an ongoing operation. This was a close down. The section chief requested an immediate review of the UAE holding company's travel records through Treasury Liaison. The response came back within 6 hours. The holding company's registered representative had entered the United States 7 weeks earlier on a business visa. He had a return flight booked to Dubai, departing in 9 days. 9 days. The handler was not running this network from overseas. He had been here for 7 weeks, meeting assets, collecting material, completing his operational cycle. And in 9 days he would be on a plane. Once that plane left U.S. airspace, he was beyond reach. The charges that could be built from the financial evidence alone would not be sufficient to compel extradition. The network would lose its handler. But 5, 6, possibly all 7 assets would remain in place, with their access, with their clearances, with no idea they had been identified. The section chief convened her full team at 7 a.m. the following morning. The briefing lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, she gave them one framework: 8 simultaneous arrests, 7 Pentagon subjects and the handler, all on the same morning, before that flight departed, without any of the 7 becoming aware that the other 6 existed. 9 days. The financial trail was built. What they did not yet have was physical proof connecting each subject directly to the handler. They had 9 days to find it. Day 1. 7 financial profiles running in parallel. The logistics officer's case was the most developed. 9 months of UAE origin transfers totaling $178,000. An additional in-kind vehicle provision traced through a domestic intermediary to the same holding company. The financial picture was complete. The communications specialist's profile showed a gap of approximately $93,000 across 11 months. 3 in-kind expenditures cross-referenced against payment methodology consistent with Chinese intelligence-affiliated intermediaries. The budget analyst. The distribution transfer plus 2 prior payments. $67,000 total. The remaining 4 profiles were completed across days 2 and 3. Each showed a different compensation structure, different transfer amounts, different timing, different routing, same source, same network. 7 different pay arrangements designed to look like 7 unrelated financial situations, none large enough individually to trigger automatic review thresholds, each calibrated to stay below the line. Total across all 7, $890,000. Paid out over periods ranging from 9 to 18 months per asset. Structured to be invisible. It had almost worked. Day 2. Sealed warrants for communications metadata on all 7 simultaneously. 6 of the 7 showed encrypted application usage on personal devices. 5 used the same application. The 6th used a related protocol variant. Session histories told a story the financial records had only suggested. Activity levels across all 6 had increased during the preceding 7 weeks. The exact period the handler had been inside the country. Several subjects showed significantly longer session durations in the most recent 2 weeks. The handler was active. The network was active. Collection was ongoing. The 7th subject was different. The legal counsel showed no encrypted application activity, no unusual communications pattern, nothing in the metadata that flagged. The device analysis team went deeper. What they found was not in the communications. It was in the camera. 11 months of document image captures on a personal phone, taken during periods that correlated directly with the legal counsel's access events inside the classified program's legal system. 847 images, taken inside a secure facility. Over 11 months. Not one had triggered a monitoring alert. 7 subjects. 6 using encrypted communications. 1 using a camera. All showing elevated activity during the handler's presence. The question the team could not yet answer from financial records and metadata alone was simple. What had actually been passed? To answer that, they needed the handler in the open. Getting there required one more authorization. Surveillance of a foreign national on a valid business visa conducting documented corporate activity is legally constrained. The financial connection to the 7 subjects existed, but financial connections to a UAE holding company, without more, did not automatically authorize physical surveillance of the company's representative. The section chief worked the legal authorization framework for 18 hours across day 3. The argument she built rested on 3 pillars: the financial connection to 7 active Pentagon employees, the distribution event pattern consistent with operational closedown, the departure date 9 days out, creating a documented flight risk. The authorization was granted on narrow grounds. Physical surveillance of the handler began the morning of day 4. What they documented in the next 36 hours was more than the team had assessed as likely. Day 4, Northern Virginia. A surveillance team in position before dawn. The handler's cover was clean. Valid business visa. Registered consulting entity as sponsor. Documented corporate purpose, tied to the UAE holding company's stated commercial activity. He moved like someone who had done this before. Over 4 days, the surveillance team documented 6 meetings. The first was a hotel lobby. Coffee. 40 minutes. The subject was identified within the hour. One of the 7. The second was a public park. A walking conversation. 19 minutes. A second subject. The third and fourth meetings were brief. Street-level contacts. The kind that looked like chance encounters to anyone not watching. By the end of day 5, 4 of the 7 subjects had been directly observed meeting the handler. 4 direct contacts. Documented, photographed, logged with timestamps. But it was the 5th meeting that changed the weight of everything. A parking structure. Late afternoon, day 5. The intelligence analyst assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency's Regional Assessments Division pulled into a parking level and stopped. The handler's vehicle was already there. 22 minutes. The surveillance team documented the full contact. Near the end of the observation window, the handler reached through the car window. An envelope, passing from one hand to another. 22 seconds of footage. The intelligence analyst's access portfolio covered regional assessments for a specific operational environment. The same geographic area that a classified military planning process was actively working through its final preparation phase. What the analyst knew about that environment, the assessments, the frameworks, the conclusions, was exactly what a foreign intelligence service would need to anticipate what was coming. And an envelope had just left the handler's hand. The section chief reviewed the surveillance footage at 11 p.m. on day 5. She noted two things in the operational log. First, physical contact between the handler and a subject carrying active access to a live planning operation was now documented. Second, the arrest operation would proceed on day 8, one day before the handler's scheduled departure. She closed the log. They had 5 subjects still without direct physical contact documentation. The financial and communications evidence would have to carry those cases. What they needed now was 8 warrants. Signed. Before dawn on day 8, day 6, day 7. Arrest framework construction. 8 teams identified. Briefed separately. Each team knew their subject. None knew the full scope of the operation they were part of. Compartmentalization. The same principle the handler had used to build the network was now being used to take it down. 7 locations across the Pentagon complex and its surrounding residential areas. 1 hotel in Northern Virginia. 8 simultaneous approach windows that had to open and close within the same operational minute. If any one team moved early, the others were compromised. If any subject received a warning, a phone call, a message, anything, the handler's phone would light up and the window would close permanently. The warrant applications were submitted as a single sealed batch at 9 p.m. on day 7. 8 warrants, 1 magistrate, 1 sealed session. The session opened at 10:30 p.m. Each warrant was reviewed individually. The financial documentation, the metadata analysis, the surveillance records, the physical contact evidence where it existed. The session closed at 1:17 a.m. All 8 signed. Go signal set. 5:45 a.m. Day 8. 4 hours and 28 minutes. 8 teams in position. 8 subjects unaware. 1 handler with a flight booked for the following morning. 5:45 a.m. Day 8. 8 teams. 1 signal. Simultaneous movement across 5 locations. 3 subjects were at their residences. Doors contacted within seconds of the go signal. All 3 in custody before 5:52 a.m. 2 were at early workstation positions inside the Pentagon complex, occupying desks they typically arrived at before standard duty hours. Both approached simultaneously in separate corridors. 1 was on a regular morning exercise route. The approach was made in the open, brief, controlled. The 7th was detained at the Pentagon's Visitor Processing Center, arriving for an early scheduled meeting that the investigation team had flagged as potentially connected to the handler's operational activity. 7 subjects, 5 locations, all in custody by 6:08 a.m. The handler was arrested at 5:46 a.m. Hotel room, Northern Virginia. The door opened 60 seconds after the go signal. He was found at a desk, laptop open, a personal phone beside it showing an active messaging application session, a carry-on bag on the bed, partially packed. His flight was the following morning. He looked at the agents. He looked at the warrant. He said nothing. The laptop was secured before he could reach it. The messaging application on the phone was showing a draft message. 1 line. A formatted reference code. Addressed to a contact designator the analysis team would assess within 6 hours, as consistent with a Chinese intelligence handler coordination endpoint. The technical team froze the session before the send event completed. The message had not sent. 30 seconds earlier. It might have. 8 arrests. 23 minutes. What the physical searches produced next would take 11 weeks and 9 analytical teams to fully understand. The searches ran simultaneously with the arrests. 7 residences, 7 teams, all moving at 5:45 a.m. 5 of the 7 produced physical evidence. The logistics officer's residence yielded financial records, documentation of the vehicle provision, personal notes cross-referencing delivery schedules against classified movement timelines. The communications specialist's search produced a USB drive, encrypted. The contents, once extracted, contained configuration data from the classified network routing file he had accessed during that 11-minute window. Data that had not produced a logged outbound transmission. Because it had never left the building digitally, it had left in a pocket. The legal counsel's residence produced the largest single archive. 847 images, stored across 3 personal devices, photographed over 11 months inside a facility specifically designed to prevent exactly this. The images covered classified legal assessments, program authorization documents, classified contract structures for 3 regional programs under the General Counsel's classified portfolio. Each image had been taken on a personal phone, inside a secure facility, during working hours. 847 times over 11 months, a phone had been raised toward a classified document. 847 times, no alert had triggered. The monitoring systems designed to detect exactly that behavior had not flagged a single instance. That finding alone would generate a separate internal review that ran parallel to the prosecution for months. The intelligence analyst's residence produced something different. Not a device, not a USB drive, not a digital archive. A handwritten document, 12 pages, written by hand in a personal notebook, then removed from the notebook and folded flat. The content covered operational assessment frameworks for the regional environment the DIA had been tasked to analyze. The same environment the classified military planning process was actively engaged with. 12 handwritten pages. No metadata. No file creation timestamp. No digital trace. The DIA's damage assessment team would spend 3 weeks analyzing those 12 pages alone. Then the protocol officer's residence. Among the items recovered was a printed document, 47 pages. It covered the movements, meeting schedules, travel itineraries, and security arrangements for 14 senior Pentagon officials across a 4-month period. 14 officials, their daily schedules, where they traveled, when, by which routes, what security details accompanied them, what facilities they visited, what meetings they attended and with whom. The document had been assembled from the protocol officer's access to the official travel and senior movement management systems. Systems that existed to coordinate the logistics of senior leadership. Systems the protocol officer accessed every day as a normal part of the job. The investigators read the document and noted one finding in the operational log that went beyond intelligence value. This was not just information about what senior officials knew or decided. This was a map of where they were, physically, every day, for 4 months. The section chief noted it in one line. A foreign intelligence service with this document does not only understand the department's leadership, it can find them. The full damage assessment was initiated within 72 hours of the arrests. 9 analytical teams, 6 agencies, 11 weeks. The classified report ran to 347 pages. Its distribution list contained 19 names. The Congressional Oversight Briefing summarized the combined intelligence picture produced by all 7 assets across their operational periods, in terms that covered every functional layer of the department. Resource flows, communication architecture, budget allocations, personnel decisions, legal constraints, senior official movements, regional intelligence assessments. All of it, assembled into one coherent picture by one handler who had been inside the country for 7 weeks. The committee chair asked one question when the briefing concluded. Had the 7 known each other? The answer was no. Post-arrest analysis found no evidence of any direct contact between any of the 7 subjects across their entire operational periods. Each had believed they were the only asset. None had known the other 6 existed. A network of 7 people, none of whom could give up more than themselves if caught, built that way deliberately. The structural principle that made the network nearly impossible to detect was the same principle that made each individual asset feel safe. They each thought they were alone. That was the design. And there was one more thing. Despite 11 weeks of analysis across 9 teams, despite 347 pages of findings, the damage assessment could only account for what had been recovered, what had already been transmitted before the arrests. That question did not have a clean answer. Consider the version where the cross-reference request is never submitted. It is not a difficult version to construct. It follows standard procedure exactly. The logistics officer's flag is processed as a single case. The financial documentation is built. The case is developed over 4 months and produces 1 arrest on financial evidence alone. The communications specialist's anomaly report is assessed as insufficient for prosecution. The 11-minute access event, plus a Dubai travel flag from 14 months prior, does not meet the threshold. The file is marked deferred pending additional evidence and placed in a backlog queue. The remaining 5 flags continue through their separate systems, some active, some backlogged, some not yet generated by the review cycles that would eventually produce them. No cross-reference request is ever submitted because no one has seen both the logistics officer file and the communications specialist file simultaneously and asked whether they are connected. The handler's distribution event completes on schedule. His 7 assets have received their final payments. 4 have met him directly during his 7-week visit. Collection events have been completed. Material has changed hands. At 5:46 a.m., on what would have been day 8 of an investigation that does not exist in this version, the draft message on his phone sends 1 line, a formatted reference code, a final operational status confirmation transmitted to a coordination endpoint before departure. His flight leaves the following morning. He is in Dubai by evening. The network does not collapse, it contracts. The logistics officer, the one case that would have been prosecuted in the standard procedure version, is removed. 1 position lost. 6 remain. The communications specialist continues. The budget analyst continues. The human resources manager continues. The legal counsel continues photographing classified documents on a personal phone inside a secure facility. The protocol officer continues tracking the movements of 14 senior officials. The intelligence analyst continues producing handwritten summaries of regional operational assessments. 6 assets, still in place, still with access, still operational. The handler's consolidated package from 7 simultaneous sources arrives at its destination and enters the analytical process. 8 to 12 weeks of processing. What emerges from that process shapes assessments, informs decisions, and influences preparations that U.S. counterintelligence services will spend years trying to identify and understand. They will not know what they are looking for, because they will not know the network existed. That version was real. It existed as an actual possibility at the moment the section chief decided to submit the cross-reference request rather than route the 2 initial files through their standard separate tracks. She noted it in the post-operational review with a single observation. Standard procedure would have produced 2 separate investigations. The cross-reference was submitted because the UAE flag had appeared twice in 3 weeks. The question was whether it had appeared a 3rd time. It had appeared 7 times. Once is a case. Twice is a pattern. 7 times is an architecture. The architecture cost approximately $1.23 million to build. $890,000 in documented compensation to 7 assets across operational periods ranging from 9 to 18 months per individual. An additional $340,000 in estimated handler operational expenses, covering his 7-week U.S. presence, his meeting activities, and the distribution event. $1.23 million. For a comprehensive internal map of the Department of Defense, assembled across 7 functional areas simultaneously, by 7 people who never met each other, managed by one handler who entered the country on a business visa and was 48 hours from leaving when the investigation closed around him. The UAE holding company through which all compensation had been routed was dissolved within 60 days of the indictments, its assets frozen under national security forfeiture proceedings. The consulting entity that had sponsored the handler's business visa was identified and referred to Treasury for investigation as a potential Chinese intelligence-affiliated front organization. 8 prosecutions proceeded under federal statutes. The handler, the 7 Pentagon subjects, each facing charges covering unauthorized transmission of national defense information and acting as an unregistered agent of a foreign government. Individual charges varied, based on the physical evidence recovered from each residence. Case file totals. Final. 8 arrests, 23 minutes, 9 days, 7 assets, 7 functional areas, 9 to 18 months of individual operational periods, 847 classified document images recovered, 12 handwritten pages of operational assessment summaries, a 47-page movement document covering 14 senior officials across 4 months. Damage assessment, 347 pages, 11 weeks, 9 teams, 19 readers. Total MSS assessed investment, $1.23 million. 1 cross-reference request. That was the margin. The 19 people who received the full damage assessment know what those 347 pages contain. What was already transmitted before day 1 of the 9-day window. What left the country before the cross-reference request surfaced the network. What the handler carried out in his operational memory that no search of his hotel room could recover. That portion of the damage assessment was not summarized in any congressional briefing. It was not referenced in any public filing. It may never be.